Hi, I'm Beck. I love books, and I'd like to talk to you about at least 30 books that should be on your TBR for Sapphic September. Now, whether you're doing the actual Sapphic September reading challenge or not, it is always important to increase the number of Sapphic books that you're reading, and what better month to do it than September? If you haven't heard of Sapphic September, the reading challenge before, I will link it down in the description box below. And if any of the books that I'm talking about today link to this year's challenge, I'll let you know at the time. I'll pop the bingo card up just now. The Sapphic September Instagram account challenge for September is here. And so some of the prompts are quite flexible, some of them are a little bit harder. And I'm here to hopefully recommend to you some books that would fit them if you're doing the challenge. But if not, they're excellent books anyway. I also have some books to go through with you today that are on my TBR for September and some books that are coming out in September that I'm excited for. So let's talk about Sapphic books. Always a good place to start. So one of the prompts for Sapphic September is translated fiction. And there is no better place to start than recommending a Sapphic read, in my opinion, than this little book here. This little book is called But Not Too Bold, and essentially it is a Sapphic monster story, and not one to read if you have arachnophobia, shall we say. The reason I want to start with this one is not only is it translated fiction, which is really exciting, but the writer who wrote the original version a few years ago actually wrote the translation herself as well. And so that's so unusual in translated fiction. And so I thought that we would start with that. I really recommend this one to you if you like horror, but also softness. It's kind of a bit of a soft horror vibe. So that's a book that I'm going to recommend to you for either Sapphic September or not. I'll make a little pile of the books that I've been through over there. So another one of the Sapphic September prompts is Toxic Yuri. And I don't really read Yuri per se, but I can certainly talk about some toxic women who love women. And I've got a couple of recommendations of books I've read this year for that as well. I have them both here. Kind of hiding my face with the books. We'll put them over here. We have Feast While You Can and we have Bloom. Now we'll take Bloom first. Bloom is a story of a girl who ends up being quite isolated where she goes to work, and essentially she meets somebody who is living an incredibly off the beaten track life. And as she gets to know this person, things don't quite add up. And the slow burn of the tension and the sort of toxicity of the women in this book is definitely worth a read. And Feast While You Can is another strange horror book. And it's about basically desire and want and defeating monsters and small town prejudice. And I think that the Toxic Yuri prompt would definitely apply to this one. So the next couple of books I've got to recommend to you are poetry or verse. So Sapphic poetry is, I've read quite a lot of it, but I don't think that I've ever recommended this book to you before. So this is I Cannot Be Good Until You Say It by Sana Ashan. And they are non-binary queer, and I went to see them talking at a panel about their queerness and their religion and how this poetry collection was the creation of their identity and their realization about who they are. And I was incredibly moved by this. 100% 5 stars. If you want to read a poetry collection this September, I would go for this one. If you are more a verse novel type of person, you cannot go wrong with Clap Where You Land. This book tells the story of two girls who don't realise that they are related, don't realise they're sisters until their dad dies in a plane crash. And it's kind of based on the true story of a plane crash. And there are other sides of the world. I think one is in Dominica or Dominican Republic. Can't quite remember which one. And one of them is in a very Western world in America. And it's dual POV, and they come to terms with the loss of their father figure or not, and learn about the the fact that each other exists, and essentially it's the story of them coming to terms with that and getting together. Really vibrant, really interesting. Thoroughly recommend it. Any month, but definitely this September. Okay, I just have so many books to recommend to you for all sorts of different reasons. I think next I'm going to talk about an ace book I read. Now, it is debatable whether this book is Sapphic or not, because this is one of the ace books that is very, there isn't overly large amounts of romance or sexuality at all in terms of the main characters and what they like, but there is definitely connection between two women, and that is Dear Wendy. In this book, there is sort of like, it's like a college campus, and there's an agony aunt column, I guess, online. One of the two main characters runs the agony aunt column, and the other one ends up making a sort of competitive column, almost giving advice as well. It's the contrast between the two personalities and the way that they eventually come to terms with who the other one is makes this story really compelling. I only just read it and I still think about it regularly. So if you are looking for asexual or aro sapphics, I would recommend this one, but some people do not think it is sapphic. Some people do think it is sapphic. So take that with a pinch of salt and think about what you personally would consider to be sapphic for that. Next prompt for Sapphic September, the challenge that I would like to talk about is a character with a disability. So Sapphics with disabilities. And I would like to talk about The Unbroken a little bit by C.L. Clarke. I'm not sure if you'll remember, but this was on my Sapphic stack of shame earlier in the year. Happy to say that I have read it now, and one of the main characters does have a disability, and in this book the disability is discussed with grace and with power. It's an incredibly brutal book, an incredible sort of fantasy retelling in a way of slavery and occupation. I really recommend it if you're into either epic fantasy or historical fantasy in general, but be aware it is quite brutal. It is quite brutal, but that also means it's passionate. So I recommend this one if you're looking for a book with a disabled main character. The next book I legally have to talk to you about is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. This is another book that I only read this year for the first time, and it is absolutely sensational. This works for Sapphic books in general, but it also works for the trans femme prompt for the Sapphic September challenge. If you have not read this book and you are from the UK, you have to read it. You have to pick it up. I have to say, quite a few of my friends who are not from the UK haven't quite meshed with the narrative style of this book as well as a lot of myself and my other British friends have. But I think it's because of a lot of the nostalgia and the sort of Spice Girls vibe of the book really appeals to us and our sense. I understand why other people don't like it, but I really recommend it. It's essentially a secret society of witches existing, and there is a prophecy, and the prophecy basically predicts that somebody is going to come that is going to begin the end of all humanity, not just witches, and chaos ensues. I don't want to spoil anything else, but you have to pick it up. It's absolutely outstanding. Outstanding. The third book has just been released in that trilogy as well, so you don't even have to wait to find out what happens if you don't want to, unlike everybody else. Okay, the next book that I would like to talk about is this book, which is Outdrawn by Deanna Gray. I have a beautiful copy from Rainbow Crate here. It is absolutely stunning. I don't know if you've had a Rainbow Crate book before. Look at the end papers. So pretty. Anyway, this is a really sweet but realistic and vibrant love story between two rivals, essentially. It's essentially rivals to lovers, and they are artists working on in the same graphic novel comic company, and they also compete online for a sort of crowd-funded and crowd-reviewed comic book, I guess, series. And the competitive nature and also the history and the care they show each other is just, I loved this book so much. It's one of my favourite books of the year, and so good. I have a lovely copy of it now. Thank you to my friend Andy for this. I have to also say that the characters in this book are just so believable and they feel so real. If you have not read this, I do recommend it. This would work for the Sapphic September prompt for indie or small press because this was independently published. So I thoroughly recommend that one. Next book I would like to recommend to you is Slant by Catherine O'Donnell. This is for the prompt in Sapphic September of a main character that is over 40. So the main character for this is in her 50s. She essentially is campaigning for marriage equality, and in the book it sort of flashes back to work that she has done in the past. She campaigned during the AIDS epidemic. She was active in other political aspects of her life, but also loves from her life kind of she reflects on them, and it comes back to haunt her as well, or to help her grow. It's a really moving tale of and gritty as well of somebody's life, and it's a sort of reflection on life and love, and it works really well for the prompt of a main character over 40. So I would recommend that you read that if you haven't already. The next book that I would like to recommend to you is this collection of short stories by Kirsty Logan called No. Kirsty Logan is a fantastic weird fiction writer, and this collection of short stories is one of the best books I have read so far this year. It is exceptional. There is one of the prompts in Sapphic September that is choose your own prompt, and if you wanted to choose short stories, I can't see any other collection that would be better than this one to read. Really thoroughly recommend it. If you haven't read any Kirsty Logan before, it's a great place to start. Another fantastic book I read this year is They Bloom at Night. This is a young adult horror, but it reads quite adult, about algae taking over the place where the narrator lives. It's a sort of kind of science fiction, kind of eerie fever dream of coming of age and generational inherited trauma coming back to the main character. It's the sort of Vietnamese lore, and it's messy and vibrant and fantastic. This would work really well, I think, a little bit for the sci-fi prompt, even though it is horror, but it would work particularly well for the AAPI prompt for Sapphic September if you're looking for Rex for that challenge. Another book that would maybe work under the sci-fi prompt. I'm not a sci-fi reader, so I find this quite difficult. I've been told that zombies count as sci-fi. Therefore, the book Hearing Red works for sci-fi because it is a sort of zombie apocalypse. The main character essentially has to find her way to her family because she's separated from them. And I actually found this book quite fast-paced despite the speed of it. I found that it was quite sweet but also tense, and I quite liked all of the characters, and you never quite know who you can and can't trust, which is the best thing about a book like that. So that would maybe also work for the sci-fi prompt. The final prompt I'd like to talk about that I don't have an actual book to show you for is the graphic novel prompt. And the reason I'm not showing you one of the graphic novels I have over there is because the book that you have to read if you have not read it already is I Shall Never Fall in Love by Harry Connor. It is so good. It's like a queer retelling of Pride and Prejudice. I've managed to get a lot of my friends to read it. I've managed to gift copies to people. It was just such a joy to read. Love it so much. If you need a recommendation for a graphic novel to read for Sapphic September, please consider picking up that one. Now, as I said, some of the Sapphic September prompts are quite open. So there's a new to you writer, or there's a pick your own prompt, like I've discussed already. So the rest of my recommendations are just, I guess, kind of random books that I have loved that I think that you might like too. There's no rhyme or reason to them, except a couple of them are categorized if in case you want to use them for choose your own prompt. So the next 3 recommendations all come under Sapphic vampires. So we have Lucy Undying, which is a kind of modern retelling of the story of Dracula, but from Lucy's perspective, which was one of my favourite books at the end of last year when I bought it, at the start of this year. I can't remember exactly when I bought it, but it was absolutely hilarious and vibrant and visceral and passionate and everything a lesbian vampire novel should be, to be honest with you. Then we have Hungerstone by Kat Dunn, another fantastic, rich novel. This is based on the story of Carmilla, and it is hauntingly relatable. Hauntingly relatable. I think it is another absolute triumph. And then we all know it's coming out, the big hitting lesbian vampire novel of the year, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. If you haven't read this, September is the time. Whether you're reading Sapphic September, the challenge, or not, it's coming into the autumn. You might want to bury things in the midnight soil. It's just perfect. If you haven't read it yet, this is your time. This is your sign. It is the story of 3 vampires and essentially how their lives intertwine, how they interconnect, for better or for worse. Another choose your own prompt I thought you might want to do might be fantasy. So my 3 favourite fantasy novels are The Final Strife, which would also work for a disabled main character if you're looking to double cross prompts, because you can use one book more than once in the Sapphic September challenge. This book follows 3 main characters in a world where people have been segregated based on the colour of their blood, and the people who have the blood colour that is the one that fits, the one that is right, have far more rights and protection, and everybody else is essentially left to serve, left in the dust. It's a fantastic exploration of women, of people trying to discover who they are, of deceit, of, I guess, empires with secrets. Rich, beautiful fantasy. I think this might be my favourite book of the year so far. If you have not read this, perhaps use it for Sapphic September for a fantasy prompt. We all know what's coming next. We do have A Day of Fallen Night. I'm going to throw it out there. Why not read it in September? The nights are drawing in a little bit. I'm going to bring this out every time I do any Sapphic recommendations, but it is just my ride or die book. I won't summarise the plot for you again. I'm sure you can look it up, but please consider A Day of Fallen Night. And then I meant to pick up The Jasmine Throne, but I actually picked up The Lotus Empire. So pretend this is The Jasmine Throne, and also consider reading The Jasmine Throne in terms of a fantasy novel, if you want to do fantasy for your prompt for Sapphic September. I think of the fantasy novels that I've spoken about, The Jasmine Throne is the one that has the most richly interwoven feeling in it, in terms of the 2 characters and their sapphic relationship. I think that both of the characters in it are terrifying. Both of them have power in different ways, and they are a force to behold. I don't know what else I can say to you. If you haven't read that one yet, then please do. Now we have some fun flash recs for you. So I have some Sonora Reyes, The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. This is basically a girl who is outed against her will and the fallout that ensues from that. We have Rani Chowdhury Must Die. This is an academic rivals young adult book about 2 girls who essentially realise that they have been dating the same boy and they try to get payback. We have Rock the Boat. This is a Sapphic telling of Below Deck. If you've ever seen the TV show Below Deck, then imagine what would happen if two people on Below Deck got together, but they were women. We have The Lady of the Lake. This is a Sapphic side telling of the story of Arthur. It's very, very beautiful, very, very magical, and it focuses on a relationship between Arthur's sister Morgan and Vivian, his maybe going to be betrothed. And I have the dating countdown for you. This is quite a spicy romance where both of the adult main characters in this are much more sure of who they are, but one of the adult main characters is not quite sure about what she wants. And so you have this sort of agonizing plot where you can see how chemically good they are together, but she has been hurt before. And it's how the fun of spending time with these other people and the vibrance of the families bring them together. It's really, really fun. Lovely to read some actual romance with some adults when there's so much young adult romance out there. I really enjoyed this one. This was recommended to me by my friend Lavender, so thank you so much for that one. Last but certainly not least for my recommendations, if you want something that's fun and light and not too serious, I recommend Amelia, If Only by Becky Albertalli. I read this when I was on holiday. It's young adults, friends to lovers, and it's basically one of the main character is caught up in a fandom, and she goes to meet the people that she likes online in real life, and she's so swept up in all of that that she's blind to see what's right in front of her face. I hope within all of that you've been able to find something that you fancy reading. If not, this is my TBR for September, some of it anyway. You might see a cover that you like here or a book that you fancy reading. There are some books on here that I can't believe I haven't read yet, but here we are. So I haven't read this yet. I know it's one of the most popular Sapphic books of all time. So we have She Drives Me Crazy. I hope to get that read. We have Playing for Keeps. I have nobody in particular. My issue with this is the font is too small for me to read it. I physically cannot see the words in the book. I'm not sure if you can see how small it is. It's absolutely minuscule. So I do not know actually how I'm going to be able to read this. And then we have Gwen and Art Are Not in Love, which I might do for the Sapphic Night prompt for Sapphic September. I don't have a recommendation for that prompt. If not this, then I might do another one. I have Sad Girl Hours to read as a book tour. So thank you for sending me this to Pride Book Tours. I got a lovely copy of The Maiden and Her Monster, which comes out in September. So I'm very excited to read and share this. I also have a couple of arcs. I have When I Picture You to read, and I have The Sovereign to read, which is the third installment of the Unbroken trilogy. And I also have The Isle in the Silver Sea by Tasha Suri, which is another option for my Sapphic Nights prompt. Based on all of this, I hope you've managed to see something that you want to read. I hope you might have seen something that you also enjoyed. If you've seen a gap in my reading that you think that I could stop, if you think there's something that I would like to read, please recommend it to me and let me know in the comments if you are going to read any Sapphic books this September. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!